Hi guys, welcome back. For this video, I'm going to continue on in my series. I want to talk about my experiences with coming out as trans to my friends and my family. I want to make a note before I go into it. When I was coming out to people, my mindset was not that everyone would accept me for being trans. And while it was true, I also had a very, very negative mindset, predicting that people would just reject me fully everywhere. I would suggest try to approach things as optimistic as possible while also keeping a sense of realism. For anyone who feels they must talk to someone about something similar to these things, people can definitely surprise you with how accepting they'll be or not accepting, even. On the topic of accepting, do not try to force anyone to accept whatever it is you're telling them. Some people can't handle it, and that's on them, not you. And you don't need to really hate someone for that either. Alrighty, now that that life lesson from Platy is over, let's get into story time. I won't be giving names of anyone in here other than pointing to if it's my family or not. So, I have mentioned in the past that I attempted to talk with a couple people prior to my therapist. Both of those people, one being a pastor, didn't understand things at all. Granted, I explained from the perspective of a Christian who was convinced that anything to do with gender dysphoria was sin nature or something that was my own fault. The pastor's response was not that great. The other person wasn't that great also, but she understood even less of it. The pastor jumped to conclusions about my sexual attractions and feelings. What he jumped to was not only that I was attracted to men, but that there was also an attraction to children. And he kind of focused on that assumption and told me, because I was looking into things regarding transgender things and all the stuff that comes with transitioning, that I would be watched by the government. And he turned it into completely about child porn, just kind of went into a rant about it. But his advice from that was probably the worst part. That whenever I had feelings of wanting to live as a woman or anything to do with trans things, I had to think about my friends and what they would think about things that I was thinking of. And even from a Christian perspective, that's very, very awful advice. Anyways, those were my initial attempts of talking to people to help myself try to figure out what I was dealing with. Eventually, I went to my therapist. A couple months afterwards, I came out to her. That was probably one of the more difficult things to do, surprisingly. Logically, I knew that there would be no reason for her to abandon me, but it still was extremely hard. I couldn't even bring myself to say anything. I had to write down that I've always wanted to live as a woman. From there, we talked for a long time about what that meant, why I wanted it, what about being female it was that I was missing in my life as is. That's something super important, to be able to find someone who will do that with you, by the way. If you're trans, make sure you understand what you're getting into. Anyways, next I decided to come out to a close friend of mine because I was tired of holding it in and only talking to my therapist about it. She took things very well. She didn't expect me to ever say something like that to her, but then again, not very many people did. She ended up telling her family, with my approval, of course, and a friend of ours from high school, and they all kind of dealt with it fairly well. They might not have agreed on the side of her family, but for the most part, they did pretty well. The friend is the one who's actually helped me go shopping a couple of times for clothes. My dad was the next one, but that was due to my living situation more than me wanting to tell him. I was worried he was going to find out, and that he already had, but he didn't. He was completely oblivious. And he was also very unfazed by everything. He told me up front that he couldn't give me any emotional support, which, to be honest, I didn't really expect. It kind of sucks, but that's my dad. I told my best friend, known him since we were both two, who basically told me no matter what way I lived my life, it wasn't going to affect our friendship in any massive way. And then my brother, my younger brother, when I told him, quite literally said, Meh, you're my sibling no matter what. Though he did predict that I was going to come out as gay for some reason. I slowly started to come out to a few other people here and there. The next big step for me was coming out to a group of Christian friends that I was hanging out with on the regular. What kind of pushed me for that was that I was picked to be a groomsman at the couple of our group's wedding. When I told them, they were very confused, to say the least. They had no clue what to really make of it, but they started grilling me pretty much every time I would come over to hang out. They would just try to get me to talk about my thoughts, about my theology, and fairly quickly I got very upset about it. I would just feel so overwhelmed every time I would be over there trying to hang out with friends. I feel like that's the only reason they would wanted me over there anymore, to just try to change my mind about transitioning, to quote bring me back to God unquote, even though I was telling them that I never left God. So I decided to end our friendship. I told the one who was the biggest talker about these things that she needed to stop, or I was just not going to be around anymore, and she told me flat out that she wouldn't. It hurt. That was really the first real rejection that I had to deal with. From there, I bided my time, worrying about the rest of the family. I waited until things were better between me and my mother, because they weren't for a long time. And I eventually took her to my therapist and sat her down and told her what was going on with me. She knew I was hiding something, but apparently she also thought I was going to come out as gay. She was extremely shocked when I said exactly what it was. She immediately started asking the glaring questions about SRS or if I was into men. I answered all of her questions as best I could, and our ride home was fairly quiet. Then I made a mistake. I chose 2 days after telling her that I would announce on Facebook that I was trans to everyone, without telling the rest of my family first. That's where I messed up. Granted, I was scared of rejection from the rest of my family, but they did deserve to know before the whole world did, in my opinion. When everyone started seeing it, I got upset sisters and angry mother. I got everything just blew up in my face so fast. I felt so horrible. But eventually things died down. When I got to talk to my mom again, we talked everything over, and she understood why I did things the way I did. I talked to one of my sisters, and eventually me and my other sister will talk at some point too. I am still very sorry for not thinking of them and not thinking to let them know what was going on before they found out through Facebook, of all things. My family is doing pretty well. They're progressing pretty well through how to kind of cope with this. Everyone was fairly shocked. And honestly, my mom has been a huge beacon of support for me. She started learning and reading about trans stuff, and she may not necessarily agree with everything I do, but I do know that she and the rest of my family love me and only want the best for me. A little funny side note, pretty much everyone expected me to come out as gay at some point in my life. I don't know necessarily why. What I presented that would cause them all to think that. But it's the way everyone did. As for my old friends who I didn't really tell personally that found out through Facebook, they've been starting to a couple of them, contact me one by one, slowly. And it's even some of the people who I told in person. It's kind of weird. It's odd. It's something that I want to kind of see where things go with it. Anyways, this is my story for coming out. When it comes to online interactions, people will know eventually that I'm trans. It just isn't something that I will immediately start off because it's just a small part of my life, really. Thank you guys for watching. I'll probably find something new to talk about regarding myself here soon. Leave me ideas in the comments below, because I don't have any clue where to go from now. What do you guys want to know about me more? Just ask away. And for now, I'll see you guys later.